The secret by the tracks. The wind whispered softly across the empty fields, bending the tall grass in slow, uneasy waves. The railway tracks stretched endlessly into the horizon, cold and silent, except for the faint hum of something distant, something approaching. Maria knelt beside the old woman, her hands trembling as she worked quickly to loosen the rough rope tied around the frail wrists. "Please, hold still," she whispered, her voice tight with urgency. The knot was tighter than she expected, as if someone had made sure there would be no escape. The old woman, Helena, sat hunched on the tracks, her eyes clouded with both fear and resignation. Tears had dried on her wrinkled cheeks, leaving faint trails. "It's too late," she murmured, barely audible. "You shouldn't have come." Maria shook her head, her jaw tightening. "I'm not leaving you here." Behind them, a little girl stood frozen, her small arms stretched forward as she pointed down the tracks. Her voice cracked as she cried out, "It's coming." Maria's heart skipped. She glanced over her shoulder, squinting into the distance. At first, she saw nothing, just the golden fields and the fading sunlight. But then, there it was. A tiny, dark shape growing larger by the second. A train. Her pulse surged. She turned back to the rope, pulling harder now, her fingers scraping against the rough fibers. "Who did this?" she demanded, desperation creeping into her voice. Helena hesitated. Her lips trembled, as if the answer itself carried a dangerous weight. "You don't understand," she whispered. "He said, if I spoke, it would only make things worse." "Who?" Maria insisted. The girl behind them stepped closer, her face pale. "Mama, please hurry." Maria's hands moved faster, but the knot refused to budge. She cursed under her breath, then tried a different angle, digging her nails into the tight weave. Every second felt heavier than the last. Finally, Helena closed her eyes. "Your husband," she said quietly. Maria froze. For a moment, the world seemed to go completely still. Even the wind fell silent. "No," she said, shaking her head. "That's not possible." Helena looked at her with sorrowful eyes. "He came this morning. He was angry, said I knew too much." Maria's chest tightened. Her husband, Tomas. The man who had kissed her goodbye just hours earlier. The man she trusted more than anyone. The distant rumble of the train grew louder. Maria swallowed hard, forcing herself back to the task. "What did you know?" she asked, her voice barely steady. Helena leaned closer, her voice trembling. "About the land, about what's buried beneath it." Maria's hands paused again. "Buried." But before Helena could answer, the little girl screamed, "It's getting closer." The sound of the train now roared through the air, shaking the ground beneath them. The rails began to vibrate, humming with deadly intent. Maria snapped back to reality. There was no more time for questions. "Listen to me," she said firmly, grabbing Helena's shoulders. "I'm going to get you off these tracks." She braced herself and pulled, trying to lift the old woman. But Helena cried out in pain, her weak body unable to move quickly enough. The train's horn blasted, loud and unforgiving. Maria's mind raced. She looked around wildly, searching for anything that could help. Her eyes landed on a sharp piece of metal lying near the tracks. Without hesitation, she lunged for it. The ground trembled harder now. As she rushed back and began sawing frantically at the rope, one thought echoed in her mind louder than the train itself. What has Tomas done? And more terrifying still, what else is he hiding? The truth beneath the soil. The train's roar grew louder, swallowing every other sound. The ground shook violently now, the steel rails screaming under the pressure of the approaching weight. Maria gripped the jagged piece of metal and sawed at the rope with frantic determination. Her hands slipped, her fingers already raw and bleeding, but she didn't stop. "Hold on," she shouted. Helena winced with every movement. "Leave me," she cried weakly. "Save the child, please." "No," Maria snapped. "No one is dying today." Behind them, the little girl, Anya, stood frozen in terror, her small body trembling. "Mama, it's too close." Maria didn't look back. She couldn't. If she did, fear might take over, and there was no room for fear anymore. The rope began to fray. Thread by thread, the thick fibers gave way under the sharp metal edge. Maria's breathing turned ragged, matching the pounding rhythm of the train. "Tell me," Maria shouted over the noise. "What is buried?" Helena's eyes darted toward the distant fields, then back to Maria. "Not what, who?" Maria's hands faltered for a split second. What do you mean, who? Helena swallowed hard, as if forcing the words out would seal her fate. Years ago, before you came, there was a man. A stranger. He came asking questions about the land. Your husband didn't like that. Maria's chest tightened. Tomas wouldn't. He killed him, Helena said, her voice breaking. Right there, near the old oak tree. The world seemed to tilt. Maria's vision blurred for a moment, but the thunder of the train snapped her back. She shook her head violently. No, you're lying. I saw it, Helena insisted. I tried to tell someone, but he threatened me. Said if I ever spoke, I'd end up the same way. The rope snapped. Maria didn't hesitate. She grabbed Helena's arm and pulled with all her strength. The old woman cried out, but Maria dragged her off the track just as the train burst into view around the bend. Run! Maria screamed. She pushed Helena toward the grassy edge, then turned and sprinted back for Anya, scooping her into her arms just as the train thundered past. The force of it knocked her off balance, sending her stumbling to the ground. The deafening roar filled the air. Wind and dust whipped around them, blinding and chaotic. Maria held Anya tightly, shielding her as the train sped by just feet away. Seconds felt like forever. And then, silence. The train disappeared into the distance, leaving behind only the echo of its passing and the heavy breath of those who had survived it. Maria slowly lifted her head. Her heart was still racing, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Helena lay nearby, coughing but alive. Anya clung to Maria, her small fingers gripping tightly. Mama, is it over? Maria nodded weakly. Yes, it's over. But even as she said it, she knew that wasn't true. Not even close. She helped Helena sit up, her mind spinning with everything she had just heard. The man, the one Tomas killed, she said slowly. Do you know his name? Helena hesitated. Then, with trembling lips, she whispered, he said he was your brother. Maria's breath caught in her throat. My brother, she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. Helena nodded. He came looking for you. He said he had been searching for years. The ground beneath Maria felt unsteady again, but this time, it wasn't the train. I never had a brother, she said, shaking her head in disbelief. Helena reached out, gripping Maria's hand. That's what you were told. A chilling silence fell between them. Maria's thoughts spiraled. Lies, secrets, murder, and at the center of it all, Tomas. She looked toward the distant farmhouse, barely visible beyond the fields. The place that once felt like home now seemed unfamiliar, dangerous. If what you're saying is true, Maria said slowly, her voice hardening, then everything I know is a lie. Helena met her gaze. You're in danger, Maria. He won't let this come out. Anya looked up at her mother, fear filling her eyes. Mama, is Papa bad? Maria didn't answer right away. She simply stared at the horizon, where the train had disappeared, and where the truth had finally begun to surface. Then she spoke, her voice cold and certain. We're going to find out. And far away, unseen by them, a figure stood, watching from the edge of the field. Tomas. Shadows of the past. The evening sky darkened slowly, casting long shadows across the fields. The golden warmth of sunset had faded into a cold, uneasy gray. Maria stood still for a moment, her eyes locked on the distant farmhouse. It no longer felt like home, it felt like a place full of buried truths. We can't stay here, Helena said weakly, struggling to her feet. If he was watching, he knows you saved me. Maria nodded, her expression tense. Then we move first. She lifted Anya into her arms and helped Helena walk beside her. Each step through the dry grass felt heavier than the last, as if the land itself carried the weight of secrets. Tell me everything, Maria said firmly. No more hiding. Helena took a deep breath. The man, your brother, he came at night. I remember because the dogs wouldn't stop barking. I saw him arguing with Tomas near the oak tree. Maria's grip tightened slightly around Anya. What were they arguing about? About you, Helena replied. He said Tomas had no right to keep you in the dark. That you deserved to know who you really were. Maria's heart pounded. Who I really was. Helena nodded. He said you weren't from here. That you were taken in after something happened to your real family. Maria stopped walking. The world around her seemed to blur again. Taken, she repeated slowly. What are you saying? Helena looked at her with regret. I don't know the full truth. But I heard enough to know Tomas wasn't telling you everything. Anya shifted in Maria's arms. Mama, I'm scared. Maria softened instantly, holding her daughter closer. I know, sweetheart. But I won't let anything happen to you. I promise. But even as she said it, doubt crept into her mind. Could she really protect her daughter, when she didn't even understand the danger yet? They reached a small abandoned shed near the edge of the field. The wooden door creaked as Maria pushed it open. Inside, it was dark and dusty, but safe enough for now. Stay here, Maria said gently, helping Helena sit on an old crate. I need to think. She stepped outside, closing the door halfway behind her. The cool air hit her face, but it did nothing to calm the storm inside her. A brother. A murder. A life built on lies. Her thoughts raced back to Tomas, the way he smiled, the way he spoke, the way he always seemed to avoid certain questions. Small things she had ignored before now felt like pieces of a much darker puzzle. Suddenly, a sound. Footsteps. Maria's body stiffened. Slowly, she turned her head toward the direction of the noise. A figure emerged from the shadows. Tomas. He stood a few meters away, his face calm, too calm. His eyes met hers, unreadable in the fading light. I was wondering how long it would take, he said quietly. Maria's heart pounded, but she forced herself to stand firm. You tied Helena to the tracks. It wasn't a question. Tomas didn't deny it. Instead, he sighed, as if disappointed. She should have stayed quiet. A chill ran down Maria's spine. She told me everything. Not everything, Tomas replied, stepping closer. Only what she thinks she knows. Maria clenched her fists. You killed him. For the first time, something flickered in Tomas's expression, not guilt, not fear, but irritation. He wasn't supposed to come back, Tomas said coldly. I made sure of that years ago. Maria felt her breath catch. He was my brother. Tomas tilted his head slightly. Yes, he was. The confirmation hit her harder than any lie. Why? She demanded, her voice breaking. Why would you do that? Tomas looked at her for a long moment, then spoke in a low, controlled tone. Because if he had taken you away, everything I built would have been gone. Built? Maria repeated. You mean your lies? No, Tomas said sharply. My life. Our life. Maria shook her head, tears filling her eyes. This isn't a life, it's a prison. Tomas's expression darkened. You're only saying that because you don't understand. I protected you. By killing my own blood. Maria shot back. Silence hung between them. Then Tomas took another step forward. You need to come home, he said, his voice softer now, but there was something dangerous beneath it. We can forget all of this. Start fresh. Maria backed away slightly. And Helena. Tomas's gaze hardened again. She's a problem. No, Maria said firmly. She's the truth. From inside the shed, a faint sound echoed, Anya's voice. Mama. Tomas's eyes shifted toward the door. And in that moment, Maria realized something terrifying. He didn't just want to silence the past. He was ready to erase anyone who stood in his way. Maria stepped in front of the shed, her heart racing, her mind made up. You're not coming any closer, she said. Tomas stopped. For a brief second, the world felt perfectly still again. Then he smiled. Not warmly. Not kindly. But in a way that made Maria's blood run cold. Then you've chosen the hard way, he said. And slowly, he reached into his coat. The light after darkness. Maria's breath caught as Tomas slowly pulled his hand from his coat. For a split second, time seemed to freeze. Anya's small voice trembled from inside the shed. Mama. Maria didn't turn. She couldn't. Every instinct in her body told her to stand her ground. Tomas revealed what he was holding. A gun. Helena gasped from inside, her voice barely a whisper. I knew it. Maria's heart pounded so loudly it drowned out everything else. But her voice, when she spoke, was steady. You won't do this, she said. Tomas looked at her, almost pityingly. I didn't want it to end like this. Then don't let it, Maria replied. Put it down. For a moment, there was hesitation. A flicker of something human crossed his face, doubt, maybe even regret. But it vanished just as quickly. You've already chosen against me, he said coldly. No, Maria said firmly. I chose the truth. Silence. The wind picked up again, rustling through the dry grass. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. The world continued, unaware of the moment balancing on the edge of tragedy. Then, a sharp sound cut through the air. But it wasn't a gunshot. It was a voice. Stop. A group of men emerged from the far end of the field, farm workers, drawn by the earlier roar of the train and the shouting. One of them held a phone, clearly recording. Another carried a long wooden stick. Tomas turned, startled. Maria didn't waste the moment. Help, she shouted. He has a gun. The men rushed forward, shouting, their presence breaking the tension like glass. Tomas stepped back, his grip tightening, but now, he was outnumbered. Think carefully, one of the men warned. There's nowhere to run. For the first time, fear appeared in Tomas's eyes. His perfect control was gone. His secrets were exposed. And his power, shattered. Slowly, his hand lowered. The gun slipped from his fingers and fell into the grass. Moments later, the men restrained him, tying his hands as tightly as he once tied Helena's. The same helplessness he had inflicted now reflected in his own eyes. Maria stood frozen, her body trembling, not from fear anymore, but from the overwhelming release of it. It was over. Finally, it was over. Days later, the truth came fully into the light. Authorities arrived. The land near the old oak tree was searched, and there, buried beneath years of silence, they found human remains. Maria's brother. The story unraveled piece by piece. Tomas had built a life on lies, manipulation, and control. But no lie, no matter how carefully hidden, could stay buried forever. Helena was safe. Anya slowly began to smile again. And Maria stood one last time near the railway tracks, the place where everything had nearly ended, but instead, became the beginning of truth. She held a small photograph in her hand, the only thing recovered that belonged to her brother. A face she never knew, but somehow felt connected to. I'm sorry, she whispered softly. I didn't know. The wind carried her words across the fields, gentle now, no longer filled with fear. Anya ran up beside her, slipping her small hand into Maria's. Mama, are we going home? Maria looked down at her, then out toward the open horizon. A new life waited ahead. Yes, she said quietly. But a different home this time. She turned away from the tracks, leaving behind the darkness, the lies, and the past that no longer had power over her. Moral of the story. Truth may be buried, but it never disappears. No matter how deep lies are hidden, they will rise to the surface one day. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the strength to face the truth, even when it shatters everything you once believed.